start with a quick report from Carmen Molina Rios of this table.
Okay. All righty. Jeez. Okay. I'm Carmen Molina Rios with the state of Connecticut. I'm on the AMCC Advisory Board, longtime friend of AMCC. Our group was really looking at the region and how we can produce infrastructure and things that are maintained. And we had a great example around, question number 3. We had question number 3, thanks to my group here, that looked at the outcomes that take a long time for a region to produce, getting infrastructure, getting infrastructure built, building a pipeline, and for an emerging production area, and what can regional stakeholders do to maintain a persistent progress. So we had a great example from California, and we all talked about specific areas of that approach and what they did, and they had grant dollars from EDA, from the Build Back Better, that started them off, but how do they continue this? How do you sustain it? And we got some great conversations around specific components in that were short-term, long-term, around having a champion, having an intermediary that looked at evaluation and monitoring of its partnerships. The key partners in this particular example had funding directed to them, and so they were carrying out specific components of it specific to their organization, but the evaluator and the monitoring played that key intermediary role to get to those successes. And so we also talked about when the grant goes away, what happens? How do you sustain that effort? And what key areas and key partners were important to that, and that is the beneficiaries. But I'm going to turn this over to Michelle just on those 3 quick points, because they were very specific on, I don't know where it went now, sorry. They were on the screen, but so I'll just talk to him, Michelle. Okay. Where's the value add? The key beneficiaries have to be at the table. Industry has to be demand-driven, market-driven, with industry at the table, with some short-term key quantitative successes, because we talked about progress. How do you measure progress when it is soft and sometimes in the beginning, where it's not you have a job that's created right out of the beginning, right? We're not talking about that. We're talking about students being trained and brought into a program, and it's a program in California that has a curriculum now built in with agriculture and manufacturing, which had never been before. And how do you get students in it? So there were some key components to this approach, and I hope I'm representing you properly, around the partnerships, the ecosystem coming together, very specific goals that were articulated, and the federal dollars was a catalyst that would have not happened if it wasn't there. So, I'm sorry.
That's ours. So number 4.
Number 4 was to narrow the focus. Gotcha. Focus to the broad problems can be hard to solve and measure, and that's why I was saying there's some bite-sized progress that was looked at that level of the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Great table, right? Focusing the metrics piece that we're going to hear about after lunch is a key component, a tent pole for focusing regions on doing this. Susan.
Great, I'm going to stand over here. Thank you to wonderful group 2. Lots of great ideas, so we're going to attempt to capture this all. But our question was number 1, looking at how we find and train leaders to put together these regional collaborations. And we started with a couple tenets, the first one being that you need to know your region and know who in your region are going to be the players in the organization. And you have different things you need to look for. One of them being who can be a group that is that convening force and that place that can put together a structure and process for the regional effort, and that structure and process can help both bring people in, it can help with the sustainability, it can help with the processes, but that is not necessarily also the same place where you're going to find the leaders. You need to look around at the industry in the region, make sure you're staying industry focused, and figure out, we use the word, who's got the chops? Who are your folks in the region that have the chops to be that thought leader, to be the face of it, to stand up there, and then have them help bring everyone else in together. But also, once you find that leader, make sure if your region really is looking at sustainability, how are you looking at everyone else in the region to figure out who is that next leader? Who are those next folks to bring that in? So that is a process that is not just putting the coalition together, but building leadership and capacity within your organizations. And we talked about how a lot of this is important because often this is a very voluntary thing. You get folks from different organizations who kind of say, yeah, this would be a great idea for everybody to put in, but they're adding that onto their job. So having a group that is looking at that structure and process is important to keep it together. And then at the same time, but leave room for flexibility. These regions have to come together. They have to adapt to what funding they get, what other pieces come together, and be ready to put that together. But we had so many folks that we want to bring at the table, which is kind of fun. But recognizing that a lot of folks who are going to be at the table may not be the thought leaders. So thinking about, as a group, who really is those folks to be that front leader and get your group raising together, but then how do you have a group that's then the back end that's looking at that. So thank you all for your great ideas. It was a great conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you. And Paul Lavoie.
Hi, thank you. I'm Paul Lavoie. I'm the Vice President of Corporate Partnerships and Innovation at the University of New Haven, and I am the former Chief Manufacturing Officer for the state of Connecticut. And so we had that same question, is where do you find the best places to find and train leaders in regions who can organize and maintain regional coalitions? And I think you guys brought up a great point, and that is, what is the criteria for those leaders? And how do you judge that? You know, in the state of Connecticut, to be the chief manufacturing officer, you had to run a manufacturing business in the state of Connecticut. You needed to be from the state of Connecticut. You needed to be well known in the industry. You needed to be respected in the industry. You needed to have a high profile. And so those are things that went into the criteria with either selecting me or selecting Curdy to play this very important role. And so we started to take a look at how that should really come from industry. It really should have somebody that understands industry, how industry works. As I like to say, especially when small, medium-sized businesses, you know, sitting there on Tuesday trying to figure out, am I going to make payroll this week? You know, those kinds of problems are things that manufacturers across the country struggle with every single week. And if you're going to be a leader of that ecosystem, you need to understand those struggles. We looked at institutions to consider where you might find that talent. Universities, innovation networks. There are networks in Illinois. There's a Connecticut AI Alliance, which is all 18 universities in Connecticut are banded together with state funding to create an alliance to advance artificial intelligence. So there are these innovation networks that exist that it might come out of that. Economic development organizations may be a place to be able to do that. Workforce boards. And then we talked a little bit about the Connecticut model, and is the Connecticut model scalable? And it really came down to, you know, Connecticut's a small state, so it's easy to do that. May not be effective in larger states. You know, for example, does anybody know how many Connecticut's can fit inside of Texas? Yeah, 49, and there's still room for Rhode Island. So I used to say I love being the chief manufacturing officer in Connecticut because I can get anywhere in 2 hours. In Texas, it would be pure. I wouldn't know who my family was anymore. But and then we really came around we came to the discussion of, should this be a national imperative? Should we have a national imperative to build coalitions around key and important industries, not necessarily regions? For example, shipbuilding is incredibly important to the defense and security and sovereignty of the United States of America. Should we have a national imperative around shipbuilding led by somebody who has deep ties to the shipbuilding industry that can coordinate stakeholders across the country around shipbuilding, bringing in those states that's important around shipbuilding? Aerospace and defense may be another area. Medical devices and breakthrough in medical devices, microchip processing, and other things that have been critically offshored, that if something happens in Taiwan, the United States is dead, right? I mean, so should there be a national imperative? Now, the problem with it being a national imperative is that governments are temporary. Ask the clean economy how they feel about their work right now. And so, you know, it has to be done outside of the political winds of government to be able to do that. So that's where we ended up.
Thank you, Paul. And Megan Bella-Bowen.
Thank you. So we also picked question one. So not to reiterate all the things, we had a lot of the same pieces of information there. I think the thing that we then built on was, you know, a couple of things. As we talked about the importance of who are all the partners, we had a lot of the same partners you all highlighted. As you put these pieces together, though, how do you pick those partners and what roles do they play? So we don't want to pigeonhole folks into certain roles. And so we talked about the importance of having job descriptions, skill descriptions, ability to translate, their abilities, so it's the same sorts of things that Paul was talking about. but then identify the people within those programs before you come in and say, oh, well, you're in the room, you're in the room, you're in the room, you ought to be the players. We need to really make sure we're casting a much broader net to make sure we get as many leaders in there as possible. We also talked about the importance of storytelling. That has already come up, that once you have these things going, how do you keep people engaged and going around what's so important? Another piece was also making sure that you identify the folks who have the connections already. So again, are these your partners who are your industry partners? Are these the MEPs? But making sure don't reinvent the wheel. Start with what is already there and build off of what is already there. And then finally, just kind of leading into it, we had a really kind of a aha moment, which was we've got NSF engines at the table and talking about how do you build those leaders. Convening, these sorts of things. This is a professional role. How do you elevate that? How do you make sure people understand and train the people to do this kind of a role, to be in the field, and start convening at a much broader perspective? So we talked about that and some of the work that NSF is doing. And then the last piece, which is really, I think, the kind of where it all pulls back together, is you have multiple people, you have multiple partners, have clear roles, but then also be, in the end, also someone still has to lead. If you don't have a leader, this all goes to hell in a handbasket when that person is gone. And so from a sustainability standpoint, somebody's got to be leading.
Thank you, tables. Thank you, guys.